So, it's been 2 months now since these plants have been growing indoors, and they're now acclimating to the outdoor weather. Adjusting to outdoor conditions should be done gradually and over a few days to a week. This is commonly referred to as hardening off. A few hours each day in the shade, then partial shade, then full sun, increasing the exposure each day. This is the ideal scenario. But if temperatures are still too cold in your area, you may need to spread out the exposure over a longer period of time and few hours each day. Here, I'm getting away with leaving the plants outside all day because I assembled a canopy overhead to create shade. And because it's a bit late into the season already, nighttime temperatures are within the realm of tolerance for my baby plants. So I don't even have to bring them inside at night. But because temperatures are already fairly warm, these plants drink up water faster, and so I have to bottom water the trays daily, sometimes twice if it's especially hot. You don't want to heat stress or water deprive young plants while they're undergoing this shocking adjustment. And remember that until they're hardened off enough, too much direct sun will burn the leaves and set back development. Another cool note is that exposure to outside winds also begins to strengthen the plant stems as they adapt to resist wind gusts pushing against them. So in a few days, these plants will be ready to go into the ground and endure more direct sunlight in their permanent positions. But before we jump too far ahead, let's consider some basic things to look for that indicate our young plants are ready to go outside. On average, most plants will happily enjoy being transferred into the garden once they have 2 or 3 sets of true leaves. It's normal for the initial cut-leaden leaves to dry out and fall off. If you check and see your plants are starting to get too root-bound while still indoors, even though it's more work, should you still need to wait longer before transplanting them outside, then consider potting them up into a larger container so that the roots don't get stunted. Try to get your plants in the ground before they get root bound. If plants do get too root bound, this can severely hinder their root development and stunt their growth enough that you may not want to use them. Sometimes it's best to just discard a stressed and overgrown container seedling and use your space for newer plants that will produce better. Transplant on a cloudy day if possible, or after the strongest daytime sun rays have passed, so the plants don't have to endure a full day of sun on their first day in their permanent locations. One other probably obvious additional note is check online for your 7 and 14 day weather forecasts to get an idea of when night temperature lows are moderate enough for new transplants to endure colder nights. I should mention here the importance of checking the average last frost dates for your area. Hopefully, you've already done this for deciding when to start your seeds in the first place, but if not, it's important to note this information to help you avoid incidents of young plants dying after you put them in the ground due to unexpected frosts. It is possible to mitigate some frost damage for especially susceptible plants by covering them during nights where frost is forecasted. You can purchase covers in various styles for this, or DIY your own by reusing large plastic containers to cover plants, or making a temporary cover with a plastic tarp or even a blanket spotted over the area with the plant using stakes. There's 2 websites I like for checking first and last frost dates, hardiness zones, etc. Check these to see if your city is listed or the city closest to you. The first site is plantmaps.com. It has detailed color-coded interactive maps and lists which make for easy referencing. The second site is almanac.com. It has the neat feature of detailed charts for specific crops, when to start them and when to transplant. Having said all this, one of the skill sets for gardening is being attentive to the natural world. Get to know and track the weather patterns for your area, so you can reference your own notes. Ultimately, this will trump any online maps and tables that chart averages. And use your intuition too, if you feel extra confident and daring, and push the envelope on suggested planting dates for your zone. So now it's planting day. I already amended the soil earlier in the season with organic matter like compost and worm castings, and you should also look at what local resources are available for building up the organic matter of your own topsoil. A little bit every year goes a long way. Here, I dug a hole just a little bigger than the size of the pot, but deeper, so that I can stir into the bottom some plant nutritional support, like 1 tablespoon of this Trifecta Plus organic fertilizer. It's nice because it has both fine particulates and large granules, thereby providing food for the plant roots that are immediately available and some that won't break down until later in the season. Another tool you can use to give transplants a boost in adjusting to their new environment is a mycorrhizal formulation. The best way to use it is by sprinkling about a teaspoon of the stuff onto the bottom of the plant after you've loosened up the roots if you need to do that, because it's direct contact with the roots that makes these organisms colonize there to help with nutrient exchanges. When ready to put your plant in the ground, turn it sideways or even completely upside down while supporting the stem with your fingers if needed, and use your free hand to lightly squeeze the sides of the pot to loosen up the root ball if needed, and tap the bottom to prompt it out. This pepper plant I'm working on shows really healthy roots that aren't bound and circling around the bottom of the container. It was in the pot for a long time, so I think by making holes on the sides helped with encouraging air pruning of the roots.
But if your young plants happen to have mostly encircled, tangled roots, and you really don't want to discard that plant, then gently squeeze the lower areas to help loosen up and unravel that root mass to give it a fighting chance for spreading its roots and not remain totally compact. In all honesty though, plants like this will never grow to their full potential because they're already conditioned to mature earlier before fully developing.
When placing the plant in the hole, in almost all instances, it's best to bury it to the same level as where the stem originally met the soil. Some plants that can easily grow roots from any node can be buried deeper to encourage even stronger root growth, such as with tomatoes and many herbs. But for most plants, such as this pepper, don't bury it past the first node where the cotyledon or the first leaves are at. This helps to ensure the stem won't rot. You can lightly loosen the soil on top of the plant and blend it in with the surrounding native soil. Gently just pack it all in. Alright guys, so I got all the pepper plants in the garden bed here, and just a few pointers. When putting in the plants after the transplanting, plants that need staking, it's a good idea to put them in right away. I put these 4-foot tall coated metal rods because as the pepper plants grow, the weight of their fruit will tempt it to tip and potentially fall. So putting one of these right away is good because as the plant grows, you can tie it up along. And by doing it now, you're not inserting anything later, risking damaging the roots of the plant. Now, just quickly on spacing when it comes to putting in plants, it really depends on your style of gardening. If you're more of a hands-on type of gardener like I am, then closer spacing is okay. They'll just require a little bit more maintenance, probably a little bit more pruning here and there, a little bit more tying up of things. If you want to be more hands-off, then you can space your plants out apart more and just kind of let them grow the way that they want to grow, and that'll save you time in that respect if you have the space. The other closing detail is with respect to the pots. Like, I started off with really small pots. Now I could have just started them in these larger pots, and in the future I may do that depending on what I'm growing. My suggestion would be if you're starting seeds for something that's going to be going out pretty much right away as soon as they're done growing to their small stage, then use small pots because it's easy just to plop those in the ground. But if you're going to have something that's going to be indoors for a little while longer before you put them outside, then you can put them in these. And so for future, I'll probably just do peppers and tomatoes and things of that nature in big pots to start, just because I know that they are going to be inside longer and it will need less work with transplanting from small pots into larger pots and then ultimately into the soil. The last thing I'll mention is after putting these seedlings in the ground, to help establish them and minimize root shock and just to help everything integrate better, you want to water it. I personally like one of these water jugs. I don't like using the hand sprayers because they're just too powerful, I find, and more awkward to try and get into convenient positions. And I don't have a drip irrigation system, at least not yet, so I'm left to hand watering. I like these ones that have a spout that shoot upwards because it absorbs some of the impact of the water as it ejects out, and then it's more like a gentle rain shower on the plants. And I find that this is better to not disturb the soil so much, at least until I put mulch down on here to help prevent some of that splashing upwards onto the lower leaves of the plants. Eventually, I will be trimming out the lower leaves as it establishes itself further out, because it's those lower leaves that really leave it subjective to potentially catching any diseases, infestations, and things like that. Plus, it allows a lot of more aeration to flow through to also help prevent with fungal issues. So I like to give a generous watering. I do try to avoid a little bit of the foliage if I can. It's good to water consistently in an area because you want the water to penetrate deeper, not just give it a light surface touch, because that won't really do a very good job to get the water down further and deeper into the roots. And so it's good to do the watering not too late in the day, because we want to give enough time for the water to evaporate off the leaves, because that will also be a factor to help minimize the risk of any kind of fungal issues growing on the leaves. Sometimes if it is later in the evening and I estimate that it might not be enough time for the water to fully evaporate away, I might actually just come to the base of the plant and give it a little bit of a shake. And it just gets rid of the bulk of that water sitting on the leaves. So that about wraps it up about starting seeds and getting them into the ground. And there's always room for improvement and tailoring, customizing to the needs of where you're growing. And I guess in closing, I'll let my little green friend here say goodbye as well. I don't know if he's a pest or a garden friend, but say hello or goodbye. Oh, he's got in the camera.